What's happening, everybody? Nice casual little Friday here. Massive 13-game baseball slate to deal with. I think you guys probably caught a few seconds of me humming or whistling or whatever the hell I was just doing before we went live here. But yeah, psyched to get into the baseball slate here. I think we got an interesting one. I wrote about it this afternoon. Pitching seems really interesting on this slate. Just kind of the way things are breaking down. But thought we kind of do what we've done the last couple times around. If you guys have questions out there, please drop them in the chat and ask me. I'm happy. It gives me something to talk about. Helps me a lot as I go through these things. I'm not just talking to myself. I know there's not a ton of people in chat yet, but hopefully a few more show up. And yeah, we'll kind of go through thoughts on what we get in the confirmed lineups here. There have been, some changes as we go through, and then we'll dive right in. I've got a crunch running. Hopefully it's still running over here. Let me just check that real quick. Yeah, still running. We've got 130 some odd lineups crunched, so we'll look at some of those. Might run a second one, get some 4 3s in there, and see what happens. Actually, let me fire that up now. Talking to myself already, see? I know you guys can't see this, but I'm just in Cruncher real quick, just changing it over from 4 4s to 4 3s, so we get another little sample of different kinds of lineups here. Something we talk about every now and then in terms of how to approach the slate, full stacks versus these offbeat stacks that seem to come up. On a slate this size, you tend to want to look toward the full stacks more. We get more of a probability that two teams are going to go off to an extreme degree when we've got this many teams to choose from. So you want to capture the full stack in that eventuality, instead of just trying to throw a dart at two hitters here, a dart at two hitters there, or like 1 and grab people from everywhere. We want to try and focus more in on the full stacks for a slate this size. So just a thought as we're looking at this. I'm just waiting for this to start running before I click back. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we've got some 4 3s running in the background here. Hopefully those will keep on going. So some just interesting things off the top. We talked about the Yankees lineup potentially being without Gio Urshela in it, and it looks like that is the case tonight. They've got Clint Frazier in an interesting spot there. I think Luke Voigt is really interesting. Only 2,800 still on the FanDuel slate. He's getting a lot of ownership there, but hitting fourth in that spot at 3.1% ownership on DK. At 5,200, you're paying up for him. He's more expensive than Aaron Judge somehow on that slate, but he's getting like no attention. So that's kind of sneaky there with him hitting cleanup. And then I think Clint Frazier right behind him is interesting on both sides. Dead minimum price on FanDuel. Getting Clint Frazier hitting fifth, he should be higher price than that, and he's not drawing that much ownership for it yet. Actually, I probably should have updated this ownership. I think this is a little bit old, so he might be getting more ownership than what we're seeing here. But let me see if I can do that real quick while we talk. Probably not. Probably screw everything else up, but that's all right. But I do think Frazier's interesting there. And then the bottom end isn't like crazy bad. Andujar is a hitter who a couple years ago put up a very nice season, and we're getting him at min price on FanDuel. Higashioka we know has some power, some unexpected pop. What the hell? Is Higgy a third baseman on the FanDuel slate tonight? That can't be right. Hang on. I gotta figure out where I can check that. That's gotta be pulling something from... Sorry for totally derailing us here for a second. Yeah, catcher. Why the hell was it pulling a third base? Was I just accidentally looking at Andujar and I'm just stupid? That could be. Yep. Nope. Why is this pulling third base for Higgy? Alright, something's funky there. Ignore that. Unless Higashioka is eligible at third base tonight, in which case it probably makes sense to play him at third base. Strange. Anyway, getting back on track. Tyler Wade at the bottom of the lineup makes for an interesting wraparound play, putting him at middle infield with Gleyber Torres also out. You get him as a wraparound, dead minimum price, helps you offset some of the salary up at the top of the lineup there for the Yanks. Pretty much the same thoughts as I had this morning. Like I would maybe look to some Orioles bats for one-offs. I'm not particularly inclined to go to the stack. I don't think it's all that great a spot. It's not a great spot, I don't think, either for Corey Kluber coming back the other way. So I wouldn't really be looking too much to him, just given the wealth of pitching we've got on this slate. This next game, if we can get it to pop up here. this one's got some interesting power spots, just given the what we're getting on the home run model through the middle here for the Angels. These guys all typically rate out pretty well in the power index, but they're getting very nice marks here against Pivetta playing in Fenway, and I think the pricing is right. And as you can see, the ownership on guys like Jared Walsh, Justin Upton, it was low when I updated this morning, but maybe it's come up a little bit since then, but I don't think it's going to be crazy high, crazy egregious where we don't want to get to it. Taylor Ward could be sneaky here in this lineup for the Angels. He is a pretty high pedigree kid with like a 15-15 type tool skill set in terms of power and speed. So he's kind of an interesting option there, particularly if nobody's going to him. Jose Iglesias is also a little bit interesting in terms of being able to hit for a little bit better than people think. For the dead minimum and no ownership on FanDuel, if he's hitting sixth there like he's projected to here, I don't hate that either. The Red Sox lineup, I think everybody at this point knows that I like the bottom couple guys here in terms of power. The upside in Bobby Dahlbeck, particularly at the dead minimum price. There's just a ton of power in that bat, so getting to him. I don't like Marwin Gonzalez at all. I think he should be out of the league at this point, but I do like Michael Chavis up top for only $2,200 on FanDuel, $26 on DK. Very interesting there. And then the heart of the order is just kind of obvious and kind of who they always are. Griff Canning is a good pitcher. We talked about him on the strategy show this morning. Not the spot for him, and I'm not really worried about stacking Red Sox bats against him. I think it's doable. Some Cubbies, I mentioned the Cubs are an interesting spot. They just profile pretty well for power against Tarik Skubal and not a ton of ownership given who they are. They're very, very expensive on the DK slate. At the top, you can see there Contreras, Chris Bryant, Rizzo, and Baez, 55, 6,000, 56, and 61. That's pricey. No doubt about that. But getting to David Bote, getting to Jock Peterson, even with the lefty, I think we're kind of just, and the Cubs are probably just kind of, by putting him in the lineup, speculating that they're not going to be against the lefty for very long. And I kind of tend to agree with that. I was getting a weird projection on Skubal earlier, and I had to do a little cosmetic surgery to bring it down to a reasonable mark. For some reason, he was projecting. I have a limiter based on like run totals and projections against that basically caps the innings for a pitcher that helps shape the projection. And for whatever reason, he was breaking through that. I don't expect a good start from him here, but I still get an okay-ish kind of projection on him. Like the 28.64 doesn't take him off the board at that price on FanDuel. We're at 5,200 on DK. I don't think I want to get there. I don't think he's going to have a good start, but I can't really figure out why or where it was coming from in my model. So even after doing a little bit of a facelift on it, it's still coming up, playable. So something to keep in mind. Not somebody I'm looking to go to. This one, I think the pitcher is very interesting, the cheap pitcher, David Peterson. We talked about him this morning on the strategy show. I wrote about him in my article this afternoon. 3.13 xFIP this season, just really pitching well. 28.6% strikeout rate. A lot of upside here against the team that strikes out second worst in the league against lefties this year. They're over 30% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. It was like 31 point something. I've got the stats table open, but it's not worth clicking over for. It's over 30%, trust me, against lefties. So I think Peterson's in a good spot here, and not a lot of people this morning were going to him. I expect that that's going to be the same, just given we've got 4 or 5 aces that we want to go to on this slate. I think Peterson's super interesting here. He's a great SP2 option on DraftKings. And then at 6,600, you can do all sorts of wild things with that money to stack with on FanDuel. So if I'm paying down on FanDuel, this is the guy I want to go to. It's not the safest spot in the world. Like the Rays do have upside in terms of power. Guy like Arosa Arena could turn on one at any given point, but it's not like they're exploding through the top of my home run model here. So I'm not projecting him for much power. I'm not projecting him for much upside here. I like the spot for David Peterson. I'll have a good amount of that. Glasnow on the other side is one of those aces, but as you can see for me, he's projecting similar to where I'm getting Peterson. He's the lowest projected out of the 4 guys that I'll consider aces. I'm throwing Joe Musgrove into that mix here. So out of those 4 guys, I'm getting Glasnow at the bottom. I'll be very curious to see how his ownership shakes out for me. I expect I'll have more of Kershaw and more of Max than I will of Glasnow, but we'll see. It'll be interesting, and that's kind of when I keep saying that it's an interesting slate. I think that's where it gets really interesting. Is you've got a couple of these really cheap guys like Peterson. You've got the 4 aces, but Musgrove being offset from the other 3 aces, given his way too low pricing in that matchup. It just shapes it really interestingly in terms of who the public is willing to pay up for, with the big price on Scherzer, Kershaw in the middle, and Glasnow below, and then Musgrove at an even lower tier. really kind of interesting, just watching where the public's going and trying to figure out where I want to be on it. And I said it this morning, I'm going to kind of let public ownership and our projections there dictate where I fall in terms of how much of those guys I'm getting to. Those are going to be my core guys for the slate. I'll probably come in, if Musgrove's trending toward that 35% that we've got him at for FanDuel ownership, I'll probably come in underneath that, even though I expect him to be a very good pitcher on this slate. A pitcher I do not expect to be very good on this slate is Steven Matz. I think he's going to get lit here by the Phillies playing in this minor league park. Look at the monster home run numbers for the Phillies here, getting just explosive upside for them. The field's here a little bit, but I don't think the field's here enough. This probably has come up a little bit since we uploaded it this morning, but I expect more upside than that, and I think there are good prices. You can put this team together in interesting ways. I wouldn't sleep on like Scott Kingery if he's in the lineup down there. I wouldn't sleep on Didi. I like the upside there, even though he's struggled. Kingery struggled ridiculously this season and last season. I wrote this team up, and you can see more of the individual blurbs, but this one's worth looking at. 2 years ago, right? Last season, Kingery, 124 plate appearances, went 159, 228, 283, which is awful. 3 home runs, created runs 63% worse than average. But in 500 plate appearances the year before, in 2019, a regular, normal full season, he went 19-15 in those 500 plate appearances with a 258, 315, 474, over 200 ISO, very nice, created runs 1% better than average. That's not a player to sleep on at the dead minimum on FanDuel if he's in the lineup. Second base and outfield eligible. Second base and outfield in 2,100 on DK. I wouldn't take him out of the player pool by any means. I would like to get to him in some of these stacks. Not, you don't have to go nuts, but at 1% ownership on the FanDuel slate, I think that's very much in play. Under 10% on DK, totally. So get to that. Andrew Knapp, where you need him on DK is fine. I don't think we need him on FanDuel by any means. If you want to use him as a offset to some of the other ownership, that's fine. Odubel, same thing. Not going out of my way for him, but he's fine as a mix-in. The Blue Jays are not without upside here. They're playing in the same park, going up against the always wild Vince Velasquez and his 15.2% walk rate this year. I'm not going out of my way for Blue Jays bats here, though. Not projecting for a ridiculous amount of power upside. I'll take what I get, but they're getting a lot of ownership, a lot of public attention. So it'll be more of a how does it come out in the wash kind of a play for me. Not one I'm really, really digging into. Trying to kind of plow through some of these real quick so we can get into actual how these lineups look, but I think there's interesting spots. This is another one of the interesting spots. Drew Smyly, similarly priced to Peterson, 200 more on FanDuel, right around the same on DK. I'm getting an interesting projection for him. This is not bad compared to some of those other guys for the money in particular. Point per dollar, that's great. And he's not getting much ownership. He has not been good this year, don't get me wrong. 19.6% strikeout rate, 25 innings pitched, 5.4 xFIP is bad, 1.48 whip is bad. He is putting too many guys on base. Looking at last year, in almost the same sample size, 37.8% strikeout rate kind of got him this job with the Braves. Nice 257 xFIP, 1.10 whip. The truth is not this, but it's probably also not this. So I think somewhere in the middle there against a team that is just not good against lefty pitching, definitely strikes out too much, not good in general. I mean, just look at this Brewers lineup. Colton Wong, Lorenzo Cain, Tyrone Taylor, Avi Garcia. Avi Garcia is decent power against lefties, but I'm not worried about this lineup at all. So I think it's an interesting spot. If nobody's going to Smyly, I might have some sneaky Smyly here. And I think he's kind of in play on the DraftKings slate at 7,600. So I wouldn't sleep on that. I would throw some Braves maybe at Hauser. I think that's kind of an interesting spot. If nobody else is going there, I'd be willing to. Team that hits righty pitching pretty well. Going to the Rangers game here. I think we're getting a good projection on Greinke. Yeah, Greinke's another guy. 1,000 more than those other two for around the same projection is going to probably, hopefully, knock on wood, keep him out of play for me on the FanDuel slate, particularly when he's getting more ownership, just based on the way it'll sort out. 9,500, I think, is a misprice on DK. I would not play him for 9,500, even against this strikeout-happy, bad Texas lineup. They're a little bit more frisky for like power and some upside. So with that and with just, if more people than I'd want, more money than I would want, I just don't need to get to Zach Greinke here. The bats on the Houston side of things, going up against a lefty opener and then a bullpen that is not that great, I definitely think we can smash some Houston bats in here. And they're not getting an immense amount of ownership. They're kind of pricey on both sites, the mid threes to the mid fours. We talked about Yordan Alvarez on the show this morning. There was a debate in Slack. If anybody who was in that debate is listening to me or within the sound of my voice, I do think that Yordan Alvarez is, or very soon will be, a top 10 hitter in the league. So there's that. He's just spectacular. Underrated option, doesn't lose anything at all lefty-lefty, and I don't think this lefty will be long for this game, so I really like the spot for the Houston Astros here. The Texas Rangers do not really need to get to. I take what I get of them, particularly around like Joey Gallo, actually not in the lineup, particularly around Willie Calhoun. I clicked away from it, like Adolis Garcia. I think Chris Davis was in that lineup. Take the power guys. They're kind of obvious. Without Joey Gallo, I like it even less, though. Maybe a little bit of upside. Although you're taking a lot of strikeouts out for Greinke, it's a little less of a power threat if Gallo's not in that lineup. So that's interesting. We talked about Mitch Moreland on the strategy show this morning. Gundacker was into the BVP a little bit more than I was comfortable with, but to back it up, it's Mitch Moreland against a bad righty. That's all we care about. I don't care what the righty's name is or what he's done against him in the past. I care what Mitch Moreland does against bad righties, full stop. So I think we're good there. I think he makes a very logical, cheap 2,300 on FanDuel, under 10% ownership or around 10% ownership. 3,300 on DK, around 5% ownership. That makes a ton of sense to me. Getting to him in stacks with Lowry, with Laureano, with Matt Olson, Chapman even going down the list there. Totally fine. I think you can exploit the spot against Shoemaker here. I think you can do the same coming back the other way with some Twins bats. Not getting a ton of ownership because they're very expensive on the DK slate. But going up against Frankie Montas, who has struggled with now that he's not allowed to take PEDs anymore, I think definitely a good spot there. And you're getting to some sneaky bats in here. I think it was Canner was mentioning in chat, min price Trevor Larnach lurking in the middle of this lineup, lurking Larnach. 2% ownership on DK, 0.1% ownership, again, probably has come up since I updated that, but still very low ownership, min price on both sites, middle of this lineup, got some power upside there, can definitely get to that. Williams Astudillo in there, not a power guy, but an excellent hit tool guy. Has snuck out 3 home runs that I didn't even know about so far this season, so that's nice to see. But just getting his bat in there he's not somebody to skip. He can kind of keep the lineup moving and keep things churning. Similar story for Andrelton Simmons down there, and with Max Kepler hitting in between them, I don't actually hate that as like a weird 5, 6, 7, 8 stack even from the back end of the lineup for like no money whatsoever. There's upside in that. It's a weird approach to rostering this team, but Astudillo and Simmons are going to be putting the ball in play, keeping the lineup moving, don't strike out. The other two guys have power upside and nobody costs anything and nobody's getting rostered. That's a weird approach to that Twins lineup, but I don't totally hate it. I'm going to make a lineup like that. How are we doing on time? I don't really have a time limit, but I want to leave myself at least an hour to actually crunch lineups. Don't roster any pitchers in this game. Reds, Rockies. I don't care about Wade Miley's no-hitter. He's still Wade Miley. I do care that Herman Marquez is a good pitcher at home, but just not in this matchup, not against the Reds. He could go out and have a great start today. I'm not taking it away from him, but I fear this Reds lineup, particularly in Coors Field. The fun thing is you see a little bit of the Coors factor here in that the Reds are projecting really well in terms of fantasy points for the obvious guys, but they don't really explode through the ceiling in terms of home run. Because Coors is not really about the home run. It's more about the gigantic ballpark, the way that the ball travels, the doubles, the triples, and all these things that that just churn the offense there. So it's just kind of funky. If you saw the home run, the power index in my article today, neither one of these teams was anywhere near the top of it. But you do see you're getting very strong projections here for the Reds. So it's just kind of interesting how those things go together when we get a game like this in Coors, particularly when you get a good pitcher on the other side who also contributes to capping that home run upside. Nats bats kind of interesting to throw against Riley Smith here, particularly if you can work in and out of the heavily owned guys. Like I think Josh Harrison's your friend in that regard. Starlin Castro's your friend in that regard. Josh Bell can certainly help you there. I wouldn't sleep on Victor Robles down at the bottom of the lineup. Has not done much at all this season, but a decent stick and a very good speed guy. 2,100 on FanDuel, dead minimum on DK, no ownership. He works. He helps to wrap things back around to Trey Turner, Josh Harrison, Juan Soto up at the top. Kyle Schwarber, big time, all or nothing type of option, but definitely a solid power bat in the middle there. I'm not sure why they're not projecting for better home run numbers here. It's something I might want to look at. Maybe Riley Smith has something in his small history that is suppressing that. So I wouldn't fully trust my home run marks. I think they should be a little higher on Juan Soto, on Kyle Schwarber there. Diamondbacks in the middle going against Max Scherzer. I don't want any part of it. Do you? I don't think we need to go there at all. If you want to be contrarian about things, I would be more inclined to throw contrarian bats at the highly owned Joe Musgrove than I would be to throw bats at Max Scherzer. Particularly, Max is not getting a ton of ownership on the FanDuel slate in particular, where he's 12-5. I think you guys are under rostering Max Scherzer. I'll happily get to more of them. I'm trying to force that in the crunch that we're running, so we'll find out how I did. I gave him a higher randomness and one of the bigger exposure caps, and I limited Musgrove. I think I gave him a 20% cap. We'll see how that all shook out. Moving on. So, yeah, Nats bats, all the max you can get into your lives while not sacrificing upside with bats, because bats are going to be really important tonight. Not that bats aren't ever not important, but I think you guys know what I mean. Clay Kershaw against the Miami Marlins is another killer spot for an ace, 11,000. As you can see, Kershaw projects really, really well for me here. 11.5% ownership, kind of similar. I think the field is under rostering Clay Kershaw for this spot, so I would be inclined to get to a lot of him. I think those are going to be my top two starters in terms of where I'm trying to get my exposure. And then I'm going to have a good amount of Peterson, a good amount of the value guys. These would be my guys that I'm looking into on DK, where, get to some Scherzer, get to some Kershaw. Look at how the ownership falls. It was a little bit different on the DK slate, but you were getting, I think the last I saw, the field was still getting to too much Musgrove over there. So I think you can offset it in interesting ways and then use some of those low-owned value pitchers that we talked about. I think there's good ways to put the DK two-pitcher site together. Excuse me one second. Lubricate the vocal cords. The Dodgers bats against Sandy Alcantara, however we want to say it. I still think it's Alcantara, but regardless, I don't know that I'm going to go out of my way for Dodgers bats, but I do like that they're not getting much ownership. They were popping up a little bit in crunches for me. On DK, I think that would be a different story, just given how pricey they are. So many guys over 5,000, but the FanDuel pricing is pretty friendly. Everybody's under 4, so kind of interesting. And they weren't getting anyway a ton of ownership, so that's not uninteresting to me. But I do think Alcantara is kind of a good pitcher. He's priced just appropriately, and as you can see, he's not getting a great projection here. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place in terms of that. I would be more inclined to roster Dodgers bats than Alcantara, even despite the ownership and everything. I just think he's not showing a lot of upside for the money there. I think this is going to be an interesting spot to attack with pitching if it wasn't for the crazy 35% ownership on Joe Musgrove. He projects great for me, as you can see. I think these are very real numbers that we're seeing from him. The 35% strikeout rate, it was there last season. It's why the Padres were interested in him, wanted to bring him here. He's got that upside, and he has. He's a guy with great stuff. We've been expecting this from him, so he's delivering on the promise that was there. The sites are not catching up to him. I don't know why he's priced this cheap for this matchup. Cards are, a respectable lineup, but definitely he has the advantage here. I think it's a strong, strong spot. It's just that massive public ownership, particularly where you can only get one pitcher. Like if you're taking him at 8,700 and just putting him aside the other aces on DK, I think that's fine, and then just offset some of the popularity with bats and just do that over and over again if you want. That's fine. I do think you can work in some of those other guys there too, the other 7,000 some odd dollar pitchers, but Musgrove is just mispriced and spectacular here. So it's really primarily on the one pitcher site that I'm probably going to be undercutting him. I really wish he was not so owned so that I could roster him in this spot. Don't think I'll be getting to Cardinals bats. Don't think I'll be getting to much Padres bats coming back against Oviedo. Oviedo's a pretty high strikeout kid. Not showing it totally yet in the majors, but 23.6% strikeout rate in his 13 innings. Pretty solid. 405 xFIP and a 102 whip. Very nice. So I'm not sure how much Padres without Tatis in there I'd be getting to. Don't really love the spot either way on that one. So it would be about Musgrove if I'm getting to anything in that game. It's just figure out how to roster him the right way. Last game on deck. This one would be mostly about Indians bats for me. We don't have the confirmed lineup yet that I've seen, but nobody was really going to them. They're not crazy high priced. Jose Ramirez is at a respectable price on FanDuel. He's pricey on DK. That's keeping everybody off his back on DK. Even at a fair price on FanDuel, he's going under-owned at under 10%, and nobody else is getting touched in this lineup. Against Chris Flexen, what are we doing? Why are we not rostering these Indians? This doesn't make sense to me. So that's one of the spots I'm going to look to try and get well over the field, I think. Nice power numbers through the middle of the order. These guys I always get to for power. I wouldn't be sleeping on Austin Hedges even, particularly where you have to roster a catcher. Andres Jimenez has upside. Ahmed Rosario has upside if they're in the lineup tonight. I don't get the ownership here. I think that's kind of a mistake at these prices against this pitcher. So I like that spot. I have more respect for Aaron Savali's game, but he hasn't really been the pitcher that we saw last season, who was kind of only a league average-ish pitcher. He's been below that so far this year in terms of strikeout rate. So if you want to throw some Mariners bats at him, I don't hate it. This lineup, particularly the top four with Jared Kelenic in it, is actually pretty nice at this point. And if you're including Ty France and J.P. Crawford in that, even Dylan Moore down here, there's bats to like and there's bats to get to. These guys at low prices down the bottom and no ownership are kind of interesting with their positional flex, with their abilities between hitting home runs and stealing bases, particularly a guy like Dylan Moore. Last year, 159 plate appearances, 8 home runs, 12 stolen bases. That ain't bad for 2,500 on FanDuel, 32 on DK. No ownership to speak of. Positional flex between second and outfield. Sign me up. Ty France, no ownership. 4 home runs last year, 305, 368, 460 something. Not bad. A couple home runs this year, 3 home runs. I would take some Mariners in this matchup. So I think people seem to be sleeping on this last game. You had a little late night hammer going there. That is the slate top to bottom. I'm sure we got some lineups in. Yep, pretty much all the lineups I didn't have since we started talking have come in since then. So load those up in your lives, in your tools, whatever you're using. I'm going to try and just click us directly over to FanDuel, or over to Fantasy Cruncher rather. We'll see where we're at with these crunches if it wants to load up for us. Or if it wants to just be frozen. There we go. And we'll let this guy... Come on. It's telling me that we have lineup updates. Close that. We'll refresh those later. We won't worry about it. For our purposes, we'll just kind of try and make some assumptions if we get any weird lineups about who's going to actually be in them. I know you guys can't see this yet. I'm just waiting for it to load. There we go. These are the 4 threes that we're running. I'm just waiting for the screen here to catch up. I think we're at 70 now. So we got 70 out of that. We have 150, I think, or 130 something of the 4 fours that I ran earlier. So if I can successfully move these over to the other crunch. Yeah, I know the lineup's updated. Give these a sec. Bear with me here. We'll see if there's anything interesting to talk about in these lineups off the top. Look at that one over on the right over there. Joe Musgrove, our super chalky pitcher, with the Phillies that I wanted to get to. A couple of Phillies anyway. And then, Rhys Hoskins. All right. I was like, why did I get 2? I hate it when they're the same-ish color, the teams. But yeah, this is an interesting, somewhat offbeat Cincinnati stack. I don't love who we're using in terms of Cincinnati there with Kyle Farmer and Shogo Akiyama. But guess what? The field doesn't either. And those guys are playing in Coors Field in the middle of this lineup too. You're getting a Winker, you're getting a Moose. I don't hate that as a red stack. I'd probably do it a little bit differently. And the way I would change this if I were curating this manually or only building one lineup is probably by going to a different one-off than Mookie Betts here. Change that up, or you can have the option to change your $8,000 Joe Musgrove, pay that down to like a Drew Peterson or one of those guys that was in the 7,000s. And then you're getting a little bit of extra salary back that you can maybe spend up to a different, I don't know that you can claw back enough to get the Castellanos there. Tiny dog barking outside. But if you do that and you change Mookie, or if you just change Mookie to a cheaper one-off, look for one of the power bats that we talked about as a one-off, and then get to a Castellanos here, or change this up a little bit based on that. That's kind of how I would approach that lineup. But I don't hate the way that one came together right off the top here. Fun little Yanks Red Sox one over there with Tyler Glasnow on the hill. That's not bad. Getting to the right Yankees with Luke Voit, Clint Frazier, Giancarlo Stanton, Brett Gardner. It's rare that the right Yankees are those Yankees, specifically Clint Frazier and Brett Gardner hitting 5-6. But those are the right Yankees tonight. And you get into some of the right Red Sox. Got Dahlbeck and Chavis along with JD Martinez there. Glasnow on the hill and Trevor Story is a one-off in that lineup. I don't hate that. So you can see they come together interestingly. That one leaves 1,500 on the table, only paying 1,500, 33.5 there. So you've even got room to kick it up to one of the other aces if you want. You can monkey around with. I don't know that that's enough to get from Clint Frazier or Brett Gardner to Aaron Judge, but it might be. Or maybe you change the pitcher there, and you'd have that room. So definitely a lot of flexibility in the way that we're seeing some of those lineups come together early. We're gradually making our way over to the other tab now. This is the fun part. I was toying with the idea of lowering my graphics settings and maybe we'd pick up a little bit of processing power that way for this, but I think the ultimate answer is just get a damn desktop and do this on that. There we go. All we need to do is sort. You guys want to sort? Do we care about sorting? Let's not sort. Let's just look. That first one's interesting. Right? We're getting to Cubbies in kind of an interesting configuration since we've got David Bowden there and we've got Jason Hayward in there as the wraparound play. I actually like that they've got Hayward batting 9th in that spot. That makes him more interesting than if he was batting like 7th. I like Jason Hayward there as a cheapo wraparound back to the top of that lineup now. That's kind of a neat little spot. I think that'll be sneaky on the slate. He's only 2,300. Capable guy. I don't know, who remembers who doesn't out there, but Jason Hayward came into the league as a very, very hyped prospect and came through very much so with his defense and has come through in flashes here and there between the Braves and the Cubbies with his bat. It just comes in spurts. So if you get him on the right day, there could be upside there. I do not dislike this lineup. You get Joe Musgrove, super chalky up top, a little bit of money to spend. Maybe you can kick that over to one of the other pitchers we've talked about here. But you're getting the right Cubs. You're getting the right Phillies. I almost said Pirates. Don't want them. There are no right Pirates on this slate. I like this lineup a lot. I'm going to give that a little uncheck there so I can remember to go back to that guy if I delete all the rest of these. Looking around, I'm going to try not to get too hung up on individual lineups and just kind of talk through some of how all of these are shaped. That one's interesting, spending all your money getting to Scherzer with some underrated A's, although it's not really the A's I want. I don't love Elvis Andrus at this point. I do like the Chapman, Moreland, Laureano part of it. Depends on how the Dodgers shook out, I guess, in terms of what's in this lineup, though, too. You might not get A.J. Pollock there. So depending on how that shook out, there could be in play, I guess, a little bit. This one's kind of similar to the one we looked at before. You're still leaving 33. You're only leaving 1,500 on the table. You are getting that Judge and Stanton in this one, along with Clint Frazier, along with DJ LeMahieu, Renfroe, and Dahlbeck. So you're leaving JD Martinez. You're leaving Rafael Devers. But these aren't uninteresting Red Sox to get to with Clay Kershaw and the room to kick that all the way up to Max Scherzer if you want to. I don't hate that either. Give that a little uncheck. Come on. This would be kind of offbeat if you wanted to go to it. Some under-owned Rockies. I think they're going to be under-owned anyway. They were trending that way earlier. And then just wildly off out of the blue Tigers. They're the right Tigers bats to get to if you're inclined to go to the Tigers. It's not a bad spot necessarily. I just don't love it. I just think, there's probably some other upside spots to go to. But the way this comes together, getting to max, getting to 2 under-owned stacks, not totally terrible. This is one that I wanted to see, is just how things are coming together under the David Peterson lineups. I don't hate this. It's getting to a lot of the right bats from those two teams. I just think there's maybe different ways to spend that money. But that lineup's certainly not out of play. I mean, obviously, based on who's in it, that's a kind of a good lineup. It's just like when we pay down all the way to 66, who are we looking to get to? Where are we looking to go with that money? That's the consideration there with Peterson. This one's not uninteresting if you're inclined to go to Zach Greinke. I'm not, so I'm going to keep scrolling. Yanks Mets over there, spends all your money, gets to some interesting Yankees. 2, 3, 5, 7 Yankees with Frazier and Andujar, plus some interesting Mets and Max Scherzer. totally terrible for a New York homer. 34-9, some Nats and A's coming together under Kershaw over there. Another cheapo with Musgrove. So it's struggling to spend, even when we're going to Musgrove at 8, it's struggling to spend all our money in some of these combinations. So that just tells you, how much savings is on the board when you get to guys like Peterson. Get more Greinke than I wanted in some of these. Let's look at the ownership here. Yeah, I got more Greinke than I wanted there. You can see where Glasnow comes in, though, for me. Only 6% Glasnow in these. I'll probably give that a little nudge when I run the for real crunches. I mentioned Tariq Skubal had a weird little projection. It looks like he came up in 5 of these. A little Savali and a couple of them. But this is mostly the pitchers I said I would be on and around, except for Zach Greinke. He was projecting well. Like, it makes sense that he was coming up for me. And in that matchup against Texas, I don't hate it. But you know how it goes. Bars having some issues accessing anything. Bars, I assume you're probably not listening to me since you dropped that in the basketball channel. But if you are, email support. And I will get right back to you in just a minute when I get off of here. What else is in here? What's fun? Anybody ask any questions? Jamal, no, Jamal, I didn't do anything with the Giants games. Was not on that one. I just sat out the little slate there. Sorry about that, bud. Let's see. Get back into these a little bit. So this one's not totally uninteresting if you were inclined to throw some Mets up against Glasnow. Getting to some Mets, getting to those Phillies that I like. I don't hate that spot. If you're going anti-Glasnow, get to some Kershaw there. The one next to it over here is kind of interesting on face value, depending on whether we get these Dodgers. But getting to that same 2-3-5-7, is that the same one I talked about before? I might have scrolled back up. I don't know. No, because that was with Mets, wasn't it? Anyway, you can put that 2-3-5-7. So I guess keep in mind that this 2-3-5-7 from the Yankees comes together in interesting ways because you're getting Andujar and Clint Frazier at dead minimum pricing on FanDuel. That's super interesting. That's something to keep in mind for FanDuel Constructions, that those two guys are minimum priced, hitting where they're hitting, and playing at the positions they're playing. It comes together in really interesting ways. Kind of keys. When you spot things like that are keys to accessing pay-up pitchers, keep them in mind as you're building. And if you have to make tweaks in Fantasy Cruncher to force them, I think it's advisable to do so. Not saying like go way out of your way to roster those guys tonight. Wow, Brett Gardner's a min price too. Shit, so 5, 6, 7 for the Yankees is min price, all 3 of them. It's going to leave me to way too many Yankee stacks tonight. Raimel Tapia scratched tonight, according to the news god. Take him out of your Colorado stacks. I didn't fully process that the part of the heart of the order for the Yankees is at 3 min prices tonight. That is very, very interesting. All right, let's not get totally sidetracked by that. Let's look at some of these lineups. I'll scroll down a few pages so we can look at some of the 4-3s. Still at 4-4s down here. That one's interesting too because Tyler Wade's also 2,000. How many min price Yankees? Let's just put them all at 2,000. Higashioka. So Higgy is at 27, hitting 8th. With Tyler Wade wrapping it up. So you can get 4 Yankees at min price tonight if you want them. I mean, I'm not saying roster them all together. That would be a weird way to put your slate together. But yeah, that is interesting. Getting into some of the 4-3s now here, it looks like. So we talked about that one, I think, with Mookie there. This one with Angels and Cubs, not totally uninteresting. Getting to some Drew Smyly. I mentioned Smiley's an interesting guy in terms of what he allows you to do. You can see how much we're spending on bats in that lineup. So you can leave those min-price Yankees out if you're paying down to some of these pitchers. So I suspect that those guys are going to be in a good amount of the rosters that have the super high-end pitching. So that's another thing as you're making your lineups to keep in mind. If you're putting those guys together and you're going to Yankee stacks that include those guys with the cheap pitching, you're probably doing it differently than everybody who's exclusively using those cheap guys with the high-end pitching. Same thing the other way around. If you can figure out ways to use the high-priced pitching and leave out some of the totally min-priced guys from that lineup. You're building in different ways. So get to the same things, just do it in different combinations than what the field is doing. That's how you build those lineups that slot in when there's 30 lineups in 10th place and 15 lineups in 5th place, but you're sitting in first place because you've got a slightly more unique lineup that's 0.2 ahead. That's how you get there. Just those slight tweaks to things that everybody else is doing. That one's not uninteresting. Some Yankees, but not the min-priced ones. I love Matty Olson as a one-off there. Looks like all the right Nationals bats with David Peterson. You're paying down to Peterson, leaving a ton of money on the table still. So you can change things up there. You've got a lot of flexibility built in over there. I haven't spotted one that spends all our money with Peterson yet. This one's close. Some Braves and Astros there with a Giancarlo Stanton one-off. So you're getting to Marcell Ozuna, Alex Bregman, Freddie Freeman, Giancarlo Stanton, all in the same lineup. That's pretty killer. Not spending all your money. This weirdo Tigers stack again popping up. So the Tigers appear to be at least in play as a potential pathway into some of these pricier pitchers, as do the Orioles. But I think the super obvious way into them anyway is through the Yankees. Those cheapo Yankees just are screaming for ownership right now. A lot of Orioles. I wasn't expecting this many Orioles, but I think it makes some sense. This one's kind of interesting here. I always like getting Seager as a shortstop one-off, particularly when he's not getting like crazy high attention, and I don't think that he was earlier. We talked about Kingery. I don't love that the Phillies that this is using, though, are Kingery, Gene Segura, and then McCutchen. I love McCutchen, but the other two are these are guys that I wouldn't mind getting, but I want to get to them when I'm getting to Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, and Andrew McCutchen, not those two guys together. So that one kind of falls off in terms of that, but I do like the teams it was using and the approach that it took there, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. This one is in play. Right Yankees, right Cubbies. Michael Conforto is a one-off going up against Glasnow. I don't hate that. Lefty going up against Glasnow there. A nice power bat, only 2,800. You're spending all your salary because you're getting up to Clay Kershaw with it. That's not uninteresting. There it goes. I don't know if anybody's gone looking, but I do play these unclick lineups when we talk about them. So if anybody's looking to duplicate my lineups, grab them. They'll go in. Maybe not all of them this time around. I don't know. I got more excited about some of the ones from the last time we did this. This one's kind of cool. I don't hate this. Because you're using Andujar and Higgy almost as wraparounds here to LeMahieu and Stanton. You're getting an offbeat Cubs bat by going to Jock Peterson here with Bote, I guess, or Boat, whatever we're saying, Rizzo. So you're getting lefty bats from the Cubbies with David Boat. But then you're getting Eugenio Suarez as an under-owned one-off hitting cleanup in Coors Field while you're also getting a Kershaw. Not crazy. Another Coors Field one-off over there in Story. I think people will be more inclined to use Story, though. Suarez has been struggling. I like that Suarez has shortstop eligibility on FanDuel, though. That's not an uninteresting Drew Smiley one over there. This is nice. Kershaw. Some more correct Phillies, we can say. With money to spend, $900 left on the table, you could maybe... Can you do it? No, you'd have to do it with Stanton. It's debatable if there's value there. Because I think Stanton, yeah. You've got the money that you could turn Stanton into Bryce Harper, go the other way with 4 Phillies, have it be a little bit lower owned. You're still getting 4, 5, 7 from the Yanks, still getting Francisco Lindor, still getting Clayton Kershaw. I think that's, what are the ownership? 13-3, 11-6. You can play that one either way, honestly. Play it both ways. I don't hate that. Juan Soto down here. This one I like if you're going to Coors. right? We were looking for one that spent all our Smiley money. So there's one that'll spend all your Smiley money. It'll spend most of your Peterson money. You're getting the cubbies that I like. You're getting most of the right cubbies here. You have Giancarlo Stanton as a one-off, and then you're getting Naquin leading off Winker and Suarez. They're going to be popular. It's a Coors Field game, but there's a lot of upside in those bats at Coors, and they were under-owned for what they should be owned at least as of last check. That's kind of an interesting way to utilize Smiley, utilize the pay down, and you're still getting a ridiculous one-off in Giancarlo Stanton there. If you wanted to lower that even to like Aaron Judge, you could do more with the pitcher. You could do some interesting things there. You could even move Jesse Winker into that outfield spot if you want. Put your one-off at util, pay down to a guy like Mitch Moreland, who we talked about, very cheap, or even pay down to one of the dead minimum price one-offs that we've talked about, and they've got a decent amount of money to spend on upgrading that pitcher spot. So that's kind of interesting. Similar construction here that gets you to the power bats from the Red Sox to a degree, like the back end ones, along with Bryce. And definitely the right Reds bats using Smiley again, not spending nearly all our salary. That one's almost even more interesting, to be honest. See if anybody's asked any questions in the last couple of minutes. How does Real Muto projection look for me for DraftKings? I did not have Real Muto in the lineup as yet. I don't project DraftKings out, but I would just go by whatever Alex has. But I did not have... I had him still on the COVID list. Did he make the lineup? Oh, he did. Look at that. Wow, I like the Phillies even better now. JT Realmuto coming back. Yeah. I would have a good projection for him here. I'm getting a good projection for all the Phillies. So it's not going to be worth our time for me to swap that lineup into a real-time lineup and get a projection on him. But hitting cleanup in that lineup, the way that lineup is projecting, fire away with both barrels on JT Realmuto. I was not expecting him back today. I didn't realize that. Makes me like the Phillies even more. If any of our editors are listening, please go in and amend my Phillies write-up and add JT Realmuto in there. Yeah, see, this one... These are the ones that kill me. Like, I'm confident there's a better way to put that lineup together, get to something similar, and spend our money a little bit more wisely. I don't care about leaving money on the table. I just don't love the shape of this. I like the guys that are in there in terms of like in different configurations, but I don't love an 8-9-3-4, and I don't love leaving $5,000 on the table to get to an 8-9-3-4. Right? The guys are okay. It's just the batting order there that I don't really love how those guys correlated. It's almost like you're taking two-mans there instead of a fully correlated stack. They do, they wrap around a little bit, but we're talking about, I've mentioned it before, when we're talking about Renfroe and Dahlbeck, we're talking about guys who clear the bases at the bottom of the order. These are not guys who get on base for the top of the lineup. They're both heavy swing and miss guys, heavy, all or nothing types. So not really a great spot there, not really a great construction there. Similar story here, but you could probably fix this one pretty easily by just changing out some of the Dodgers. Or just, if you want to kick Judge up to a more expensive one-off. I don't love the way it's spending our Peterson money, though. This one's all right. Get to those Indians that I mentioned. Oh, how much Indians did I get to? Not enough. Look at that. Yeah, 5%. No wonder the field's not coming up with a lot of them. We're not getting them. So maybe it's just anti-optimizer in terms of why the Indians were projecting so low. Some of these other plays just getting pulled up. But I might give the Indians a little manual kick here because I do like them, and if nobody's going to them again in that spot, I think it's well worth doing. I don't like oddly have the pitcher wrong or anything, right? It is flexing, right? Yeah. Yeah, keep an eye out for that Indians lineup, but I do like it. I think they are in a good, underrated, underappreciated spot here, and if nobody else is there, I would go to that late night hammer. They've got three guys at the bottom of the projected lineup that are at 2,000 as well on FanDuel, and Ahmed Rosario, easy for me to say, 2,200 on the FanDuel slate, multi-position eligible. 3 guys in that lineup, multi-position eligible. Ah, man. Get me some Indians. I am going to have to tweak this to get to more Indians bats, I think. That's what I'll be doing over the next hour and change, guys. Going to probably jump out of here 2 or 3 minutes early. This was fun. I don't see anything else interesting to talk about other than another lineup that cannot spend all its money. You could swap Rowdy here and spend your money a little bit better, I guess, if you want to. 29.5, you're leaving an awful lot on the table, but you're getting to a lineup that does include all the right Red Sox or a bunch of the right Red Sox. Well, actually, I'm wrong about that. Instead of Hunter Renfroe here, just make that JD Martinez. Instead of Rowdy Tellez, make that somebody else and spend your money more wisely if you're putting that one together. Max with Yankees and Braves. God, there's all kinds of line. I could do this all day. Don't love that one. This one's interesting, but I'm not getting to Padres, I don't think, very much at all today. I don't like the way that lineup's looking today. But if you are, it's a good way to do it. All right. Let's cut this off now. This was fun. There's a Peterson that spends our money in interesting ways. Damn it, I got to stop. I kind of like this one. I'm glad we spotted a Peterson that spends 34-7 and gets to some interesting bats. I talked about Taylor Ward. This is where we'll punch out. But if this is the Angels lineup, if this is the Nats lineup, this is not an uninteresting stack. With that, guys, really appreciate it. I think Yahoo sponsored the basketball shows again today. If not, free plug for them. But we've got some kind of special Yahoo tournament going on today. I didn't actually read the details before I jumped on this show. But check out the basketball channel. I think there's some kind of cool Yahoo-based tournament going on. Appreciate everybody hanging out. This was a fun time. Bring more questions next time if we do another game plan show. I'll be here tomorrow doing this, and we've got all kinds of great content. Appreciate it, guys. See you.